Hi, and welcome to our ongoing series looking at the evolution of the Beaver Dam Area Community Theater over the decades. Hi, I'm Craig Warmbold, and I'm the facilitator for this adventure today, and we are going to be focusing on the 1980s. I would like to introduce our guests here for our look at the 1980s at the Beaver Dam Area Community Theater. We've got Diane Lutz, Pat Lutz, Barb Vockroth, Roni Harper, Swain, and Annette Kamps. And my job as facilitator is basically just to kind of get things going and then stand back and let them all spin their yarns and tell their stories here. And so we'll maybe just start in a counterclockwise fashion, and maybe you could just, tell us when you started at the theater, and I guess maybe your first experience as far as the 1980s are concerned.
Okay. My first experience was in the summer of 1983. I directed South Pacific, and it was the very first building in the 219 North Spring Street building. And of course it came with a few challenges, considering the church, I believe, was still worshiping there. And as they moved out, we moved in. I used to joke because the altar was still there, and when I said to the cast, okay, I want you to cross downstage 5 steps, they literally were, because they were going from the altar down steps onto the lower level. And at one point we were rehearsing and they were taking out the organ, the pipe organ, so we worked around that. But I think Patrick and I were talking, one of the funniest things is you have a production team, and some of the typical responsibilities, makeup, hair, costumes. Well, we had to have, in the house, we had to have somebody in charge of fans, because it was not air conditioned. It was one of the hottest summers on record, or so we felt. We had to have somebody there were no screens on the windows, so I think my house manager brought some netting from camping to keep the mosquitoes out. Let's see, what else did we have? That was just kind of some unusual things, but we were excited because it was our own building. And we thought it was a good choice of production, because it was the first production there. And South Pacific was the very first musical production, I don't know, how many years prior to that. So it was sort of an ongoing, kind of tied the seasons together, so to speak. A new journey, a new step or phase for the community theater.
Was there a feeling that there were big shoes to fill? What with South Pacific having been, the first, right?
Right. Well, it was interesting history, because the man who played Emile de Beck in 1983, Gene Beneke, also played Emile de Beck in the first production. Oh, wow. I mean, it actually was more age appropriate, because the storyline, much older man and a young woman, and he was an older man, and he was attracted to a young woman who was a freshman in college. Interesting thing is, he was a math teacher at the high school, and the young woman, the Nellie Forbush character, was one of his students.
Oh, well.
That is an awkward.
But she was gone. She was out of high school, and so it was like, and I used to tease her. I'd say, those kisses are getting longer and
Yeah. I remember having to sit on Roger Van Heren's lap for Oliver. That might have been late 70s, but he had been my English teacher,
right.
And then you gotta get cozy and.
So was that 1983?
1983, the first.
So that was did we move in, Patton, 82
right.
or 83?
83.
83.
I know it was the first show, but
It was all one big.
Patrick and I just were working on that. We think that the spring show had been at Drager's Village Square that year, and then or is that was that Blaze Spirit thing? No, yeah. No, Blaze Spirit was at
the mall.
Was at the mall.
Right.
But so that was the first year that we had something at the theater. What was the last? Plaza Suite was at the old theater.
Yeah, we were trying to figure out what was the last one.
Yeah, it was in the early
at the
80s that we lost our theater.
Right,
We had to traipse around.
Yeah, and that was quite a transition, because we've been in the Wisconsin theater all those years, and then all of a sudden we had to move.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't know where we were going to be, so it was quite a transition for the whole organization. So I got involved in '82, the spring of '82, with The Count Will Rise Again, and that was at Drager's.
Oh, Randy.
That was your
And-
first
yes,
experience?
For
Oh.
Beaver Dam Community Theater. We had moved from Menominee, and we were very involved there with the theater organization. And we'd heard good things about the theater, so I thought, well, I'll just jump in and see what it's about. And we had tryouts at the Girl Scout house because our building, which is now the Alano Club, we pretty much shut it down for the winter because we didn't want to pay heat and water. And so when we went into the building, we would use the Alano Club and turn the heat on and as low as possible, because we were low on finances at the same time at that point, and everybody had their coat on when they were rehearsing. But we had tryouts at the Girl Scout house and had used the restroom when we were at the Alano Club. That was our building that we owned. You had to get a key and go down to the gas station that was at that time on the corner of Spring Street and use the outdoor, well, it wasn't, the door for the restroom was outdoor, but you had a key that you could go in and use it because we had all the water shut off at the building.
Wow.
But anyway, so the Girl Scout house also then was part of our organization's
Yeah.
meeting place. We had tryouts there for shows at different times, so we used the Girl Scout house a lot. But it was exciting in '83 when we bought the building in the spring of '83. It was a major purchase for us. I think we paid about $48,000 for the building at that time. And everybody was worried, how were we ever going to pay for this building? Would we be able to have enough shows? And it kind of parallels all the same kind
It
of
does.
feelings we had as we purchased our new building. But in the spring of '83, and I can't remember the exact month, but the community theater organization, we met in the basement, and the Baptist congregation, the numbers had dwindled because of age, and they just couldn't afford the building anymore. So they said, okay, we will sell it to you on land contract, but we would still like to use the building for our services on Sundays. So we thought, well, okay, we can make that work out. But we said, there's going to be times when the stage might be half painted black and you're going to be doing your services with some interesting things on the stage. And they said, well, we really don't have a lot of choice, so we're going to do this. So on the very last day that they were in charge of the building, we had to wait in the basement because Lisa Weisenseld played the organ for the very last time.
Oh.
And many people came to hear her do this little concert, and lots of family members came back, friends of the Baptist congregation. And so when they finished it, they came down and said, we're finished, and people were upstairs hugging and tears in their eyes, and I understand because that had been a very large congregation, very involved in the community. But we ran upstairs and were running in every corner of the building, looking and thinking, this is going to be so great, we will never fill up this building, we have so much room, and we were so excited, and thinking about, okay, we're going to do this and this and this, and that's how it all started.
Yeah.
And so it was
I
awfully
remember one
exciting.
of the fundraising plugs was that we would have more space for storage.
Oh, we did.
Right.
Maybe the first year we
Right.
had.
And again, there's another parallel, because our workshop was full of stuff that we eventually had to move over, and it had a very nice church basement, and it was full for almost a year as we kind of picked away at it, took things apart, but we had to move out within like a month after we sold the building that's now the Alano Club.
I'm not sure that I know the facts on this. Is it the same group that now has the church across from us, in the parking lot? Is that a different church group? I thought it was, but maybe
I
not.
think it is different.
It's a
Yeah,
different.
it's different, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. But it was the Baptist congregation, as I said, and so every Saturday night, another member and myself, we would have to go to the theater and move their altar and a couple of other things, their lectern, from the office. And they maintained the office, we couldn't use the office.
That's right.
So they had all of their things there, and we were supposed to touch it. And so we'd move their things and put them in position, and they'd have their congregation. They had about 30 people. But another funny story connected with that is because we were all using the same building, we were also very careful to turn the heat down in the winter. That first winter, we were really worried because, again, our finances were low. We spent all of our reserve money, and we had almost no money. And so we were talking about fundraisers and things like that. And so one month we got the heat bill, because somebody had used the office and turned the heat up. And the problem was, it was just one huge furnace in the basement heating the entire building. Where now it's zoned, and this building is zoned as well. So the building heat bill was about $350, which sometimes I have in my own house now. But back then, so I was on the board at the time, and I can't remember who was the president at the time, said, when you come to the meeting, bring your checkbooks. Because we're all gonna have to chip in, you know, like $10 or $15 to help pay for the heat bill for that month, for that first winter.
Yeah.
But we did have some interesting fundraisers
We did.
right in the building. One Father's Day, we had a pancake breakfast.
Yeah.
We had more than one.
I think
Yeah,
we've got a
yeah,
couple of
those,
those.
right?
And then we also had an Italian night.
We had
Oh,
Italian,
yeah.
That's
yeah.
right. John
Right.
Painter, is that his name? John?
Yeah, he helped us with the pancake, and then Carolyn Buss, who was very involved at that
Yes.
time, she had a friend that did the Italian cooking and had the sauce,
Yeah.
and we actually did very well. We all had fun serving all these.
Because the
Being
building
a
had a
church.
full kitchen,
Yeah,
for being a
exactly.
church, so
Yeah.
we used the full kitchen.
And that
Some
particular
food kind of
congregation
things.
was known for their fish fries. And so they had a full kitchen with all of these griddles and big stoves and refrigerators, and apparently at one time they made a lot of money by having carry-out fish, the Baptists.
Mm.
So we were lucky to have everything in the basement kitchen available, so we had those pancake
Does
breakfasts.
Anyone remember when the chamber used the basement at Halloween as a fundraiser?
No, I don't remember that.
They turned it into the haunted church.
Right,
Oh.
And that was when the Baptists said, you know, I think we're gonna move on, because the front of the building said, you know, come here, it's the haunted church, and then.
Oh, I remember it had
Okay.
something to do with it.
It's like, I mean, I can
The fact that
understand
it was
that.
black
Yeah.
It
and
meant
their
no
altar was
disrespect,
gone.
but that's what it was called, and, you know,
Yeah.
where people pay money to go through this labyrinth of, you know,
Yeah.
spooky
yeah,
things.
along with the JCs and the
Yeah.
chamber.
Mhm.
And
And
so
one
then,
little fact too, Patrick, is that the basement area was the first gym in
Yes.
the community.
yeah, it was built in the early 1900s, the building, and had a major connection with Wayland.
Oh.
They would use that building for all of their lectures, they would use it for graduation ceremonies and
Because it had a
concerts.
slanted floor, the Baptists are big on having slanted floors, or
Right.
used to be.
And so, and
And then-
Wayland also was a Baptist
Oh, yeah.
school.
And the
when it
basement
first
had,
started.
what had at one time been a really nice sprung wooden
Right.
floor.
It was considered the best basketball court in the city at one point, right?
Wow.
But it actually was panels that
Mhm.
hid
Right.
seating
Seating, right.
for,
And that, if you look up there, there's memorabilia now, and those doors would open, but if you open them now, it would open into the costume.
Mhm.
So that's where the
That's
people
right.
would sit,
That's where
because
the-
it was so tight, I mean, nobody could sit down actually on the floor.
Yeah.
They had to sit up above in this
That-
little
oh my
viewing
gosh.
area, and there were locker
I
rooms,
wondered why those doors
also
were
in the
there.
basement,
Yeah.
in the, what we consider the paint room or the furnace room.
Mhm.
How long did the partnership with the church last? Did it
Only
make it
a
on
few years, and
It was
then they
even a few
moved
years.
to Wayland and used the chapel at Wayland.
Okay.
It was
all right.
pretty shortly, because they decided it was just too awkward. Our purposes were pretty different.
And what was Drager's Village Square?
Oh, that was a restaurant,
Okay.
and a lot of, if people remember it, they would remember that it had a tree in it
Where was it located?
on Spring Street, so.
Okay.
it's the Elks
Elks
Club.
Oh, it was the Elks
Is it
Club.
the Elks?
Okay.
Okay.
So you guys performed a couple shows?
Oh,
in
yes.
Oh,
Drager's
yeah,
Village?
no, it was
Yeah.
when we were
Yeah.
between, after we couldn't use the Wisconsin Theater anymore, and then before we acquired the Baptist Church,
Okay.
we were floating.
Yeah, we were wanderers, right?
And just to clarify, the Wisconsin Church is what is now Rogers Cinema. if I'm
Right,
not
right,
mistaken.
yes.
right, right,
Okay.
right.
Yeah.
Very good.
And what happened is that they let us, for many years, use the building. It wasn't the most convenient because we could only do the shows during the week, not on the weekends, and many times we had to rehearse, you know, late at night, take everything down. And, you know, that was a big story for the 60s and 70s.
Yeah,
Yes.
maybe
Right,
period in the
But we only
80s, but
heard
those
about
people
it.
probably
Yeah,
talked
right.
about it.
Right.
And
yeah.
if you
Yeah.
had to exit stage left and you had to enter stage right, you had to go out of the building, run around the building and
Yes.
come through.
Yeah.
Well, and to enter stage right, you had to go up these little steps, kind of crawl across a platform that was above a boiler, hang on to this asbestos-covered pipe, and lower yourself down and come out. Because I remember as a kid, working on props.
Are you talking about the movie theater?
In the movie
now?
theater.
Yeah.
I remember as a kid working on props, sitting on that platform, resting my chin on what I now know to be an asbestos-covered pipe, watching for the next time we're gonna do this. So that carried on into the early 80s,
Right.
but then we got rid of, well,
What happened is they said we couldn't do the productions
they
there
wanted to turn
because-
it into a multiplex.
Right, what they did is they took the balcony, which we needed for productions, and they turned that into a actual theater. So they created a screen, a small screen in the balcony, so they had two theaters on at the same time.
And you performed at the mall as well.
At the mall, yes,
We
at the
did-
mall.
I think Blood Spirit might have been
Blood
the only
Spirit,
show there,
I
although
think.
we did a major fundraiser at
Yeah,
the mall.
yeah.
Yes, we did, well, it wasn't a fundraiser, but we had celebrated our 25th
Yes.
anniversary
Right.
there.
Right.
And I'm sure it went into that pot in some
Yeah,
way.
yeah.
Absolutely.
But that was a fun show because we kind of reflected everything that we had done so far.
Yeah.
Roger Van Haren was the MC, and it featured our treasured bench that has
Oh,
Yes.
Yeah.
become.
That was in the 80s, right?
What is a
Yes.
treasured bench?
Oh, it's just this clunky
It's our
old
good luck bench.
bench that
Right.
looks like it came from a shanty's back porch or something, but if you paint that thing or beat it up or whatever, you can put it on as a park bench or a, picture something from, I'm
The
sorry.
King and I?
The King, not usually the King and I, but I guess if you painted it white, what am I, Dire Van Frank maybe, or the
It started with Fiddler on the Roof.
Fiddler on the Roof is what
We
I'm
were
thinking
looking
of,
for
yeah.
a prop that would be appropriate to the primitive, country look. And then all of a sudden, people wanted to use it in every show
Yeah.
as their good luck
It was
bench.
I use it in every single show
To this day,
that I,
right?
yep.
I
that
think of
I've
the
been to.
chairs,
Still
I like,
Yeah.
why couldn't we use those chairs this last summer? The chairs that had the round backs and the.
Okay,
So the fun-
and those have a story because those were the dining room chairs from the Hotel Rogers.
That's
Oh.
And they were getting rid of them all, and we said, yeah, we'll take them, and so we painted those chairs and used
Oh
them,
my
and there's
gosh.
still a few of them stored under the floor in the old building
Oh.
at the Spring
They
Creek
were
building.
used
That's-
so
oh, yeah.
many times.
Yes, it just
Recovered,
almost seemed like it
painted,
wasn't a show if you didn't
I
have
know,
one
we
of
had to
those
have
chairs in it.
chairs in it, right, right, yeah.
Barbara, what are some of your earliest memories of the theater in the 1980s?
Well, my husband and I, my husband, is from Beaver Dam. And we were stationed out in San Diego, and he got a job here in Beaver Dam. So we moved here, and we had met in community theater in West Bend. We were in a play together. And so one of the ways, I just knew that theater people were so welcoming. So we decided, he was always involved through high school and before he went into the Navy. And so his first show was 1776. And I remember doing the makeup for that, and I was pregnant. And to do the makeup, there was this room upstairs in back of the theater. And it was this little room, and one night, I'm standing there, and I think I was doing John Outen's makeup, and all of a sudden it dawned on me, if there's a fire, we're dead.
That building was a fire.
It was a fire trap.
Yeah.
And I thought, I don't know if I can come and help anymore. This is really scary. And then you had to walk down these.
They were only this
Right,
wide, they
this
literally were
wide,
only that
and
wide.
of course they're that steep.
And rickety.
And rickety.
Yeah.
So that's how I
Uneven.
got involved. And then
What year was
I
that?
decided I really wanted to be in a show. And so I tried out for Plaza Suite, which was in the spring of 1980.
80, okay.
And so that was my first show. But I had helped do makeup for the other ones. And I remember, I know when we did Pippin, I remember dragging lawn chairs into the middle school. I mean, you all helped. I mean, community theater is really that. It's community. And I can remember when because Plaza Suite was at the theater, at the Rogers. And it was 3 vignettes and 3 different directors. And I was the last vignette, and my director was Jeff Rayberg.
Oh.
And my husband was Bob Hansen, and it was hysterical.
You were
It was-
hysterical.
It was so fun.
That
It
show
so
was
fun.
because Annette was trying to, she spearheaded trying to cultivate more directors, and there were several of us that were, you know, like I had grown up in community theater, but so, and Jeff Rayberg and I and Marilyn Van Haren each did an act, because Plaza
So
Suite is really like 3 freestanding shows that just take place in the same room.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Barb wasn't
So
in
it
my
was
act,
fun.
but so I just got to sit back and laugh at
Yeah,
Barb.
so it was really fun.
What was so memorable about it? I've been hearing, you guys have been teasing before we started rolling, there was all the chatter
They
about
were
this.
just the perfect comic combination. They
Yeah.
just hit it right.
Really did.
Yeah.
I can still
Is
remember.
is
And
that
the
the one where
dialogue
your
was so
daughter
fun.
wouldn't come out of
The
the
closet,
room?
yeah,
Yes.
she was in the
It was
bathroom.
the daughter's wedding
Yeah.
day, and
And she
she
wouldn't come
out.
out. And one of the funniest things is where Bob Hansen, I'm kneeling on the floor, begging her to come out. I ripped my nylons. And Bob Hansen picks up a chair. And I think this was your suggestion,
I don't
Annette,
remember.
where he leaps onto the bed, runs across the bed, ready to smash the chair against the door when she says, "I'm ready now." And it was just, I mean, the timing, he was
timing was
wonderful.
Yeah.
He was absolutely wonderful. So he was one of the first of my husbands.
First of many in the 80s.
Well, there's several, yeah.
But she's still with Randy?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. And then Randy, then we had, and I remember bringing our little boy, he was about 1.5, 2, and everybody would, it wasn't unusual to see little kids at rehearsals, and everybody would just kind of pick them up and carry them around, and my kids got so used to that. I think they thought that was normal, and, so then I dropped out, and we had decided that if my husband were in a play, I wouldn't be, and vice versa.
Oh.
And so, because we didn't want to, that was just too much.
Spend all your money on
It's-
sitters?
Yeah. So, yeah. And then, but I would do backstage stuff, and I do remember setting up lawn chairs at the middle school for Pippin. Randy was in The Count Will Rise Again, and that was fun.
It was
And-
fun.
It was fun.
And
That's
that was a
right there.
great one.
That was Patrick's first show.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, and so, I just felt community theater was where you met people and met so many wonderful people that, still friends today. And
So if I'm keeping score right, before moving in 1983 to the previous theater on North Spring Street, you guys were in the middle school and Drager's Village Square
Yeah.
and
The
what about the
mall.
mall.
And
Am I
another
looking at-
production, we had a production, The Sunshine Boys at Whalen.
That's right. Which
Right.
building in Lindsay
It
Gymnasium?
was the gymnasium,
Yeah.
right,
All
right.
right.
So
That's
that
right.
had many challenges, along with the lawn chairs that we had to set up every night.
Weren't the
Because-
lawn chairs from leftovers from Tommy Bartlett and
Yes.
Dallas?
Yes.
Right.
They had gotten new chairs, so we got those in time for
We actually got
Oklahoma.
those for Oklahoma.
Which
Yeah.
is what year?
That was during the 80s also, that was
That was
81.
the
Summer of
81.
'82.
Yeah.
The
And
50th production, yeah.
yeah, I told a little bit of that story last taping, but it was quite a challenge because of course it was in a gym. Fortunately, in the summertime, the gym wasn't used, so we had full use for rehearsals and show. And we had kind of a 3-sided, not quite in the round, but
Yeah, nearly round.
nearly
Yeah.
round. But the chairs were the big memory because, as Diane said, they were purchased from the Tommy Barton show, but they had been rejected for quite a while. They had been sitting outdoors
Right.
for a year.
Some of them weren't as strong as you
No, so we paid $1 for each one, which was probably too much. And then we had risers, and we set up this kind of semi-round theater. But as I mentioned last time, it was kind of risky in terms of insurance because there was some webbing that wasn't as strong as others, and we had a couple of incidents when people kind of
Fall
fell
through,
through the
right.
chairs.
Yeah.
And then the other part of
I don't know why I'm laughing, but.
the other part of the distinctive production for sound effects, we hung parachutes to try to help with because the gym was not ideal for acoustics at all. But, that spirit of community theater, of solving problems, and part of our history. And I think in this building, we have a whole new set of problems, but that's a major part of doing theater and creative things, is solving problems, which is good for all of us.
We went from having, even with the thrust, the stage at what we call the Wisconsin Theater was pretty small. At Drager's Village Square was about a postage stamp. And then, so when we did Oklahoma, that's the first and maybe only time we've done a show completely, that was pretty much in the round.
Yeah, I think Pippin had a more traditional.
Pippin used a
Yeah.
thrust stage, yeah, with a backdrop. So anyway, that was the first show I ever choreographed, and one of the things I can think of about Oklahoma being a challenge is that being in the round, and almost in those days there were more so, a lot of teenagers, young adults. How many people were in that cast of Oklahoma?
I don't know, it was a large, typically a large musical.
Yeah,
cast.
so and it lent itself kind of to being in the round because I like square dancing and stable and that sort of thing of the Old West. But to try to rein everybody in, literally like, okay, we're gonna do the next scene. We're gonna, you guys, come on, we're gonna learn the ball change now. Oh my gosh, it was just so much work, like getting all these high-strung theatrical people to focus
Because it's such a large space.
and when they're performing facing out. So you can't face, it was really challenging, and we just never did it in the round before, nor did we do it again. So that was really hard work, and it was my very first choreography, and there were about 40 people in that cast,
At least, yeah.
all dancing at once. So it was really, but I loved it. It was, yeah.
And you stuck through it? And you
Yes.
stuck with it until the transition into the new permanent theater?
Oh my gosh, yeah, so the next summer we did, I'm sorry, we can go back and forth, but the next summer we did Pippin in the junior high again, and used the risers again and the chairs, but that time we built a stage and had a curtain, like this, across the back of it, I think, or Doug Klitsky, I loved working with Doug Klitsky, and he had like a silver lame thing or something that you had to use like hair dryers to shrink it so that it would be a big mirror.
Or did you do that again?
Maybe that was,
That was Gypsy.
maybe that was
That
Gypsy.
was
Okay, I
Gypsy,
mixed,
yeah.
that was another one.
I think Pippin had
It just had a curtain,
Or
okay,
a-
never
Or a
mind.
set.
They're
It
blurring
had a
together, I
set.
choreographed Gypsy too. Anyway, so that one was just more of a regular set, and we had the whole junior high cafeteria to hang out in between, so that was kind of nice because we weren't used to having that much space. Because back when we were in the Wisconsin theater, she talked about so when you went up this really skinny, wobbly set, because it was an old vaudeville theater, so it did have a makeup room, but they were like back to back. So the boys had to change clothes downstairs, just sort of behind a little half partition or something, and the boys. And then if we would often, for summer shows, have a tent awning back on the lawn
Yeah.
behind the thing. So you'd have to hang around outside, and that was our like auxiliary makeup place.
Right, right.
And, well, actually, this goes back into the 70s probably, but I remember one time when they did the Music Man, that the kid that played Winthrop was busy playing cards with the other boys and forgot to make his entrance for his main song, Gary, Indiana. I can't remember how they got out of that. They just had lived a while and moved on or something, but because we didn't have monitors.
No.
Now we have a TV every
Monitors
30
all over the
feet, and you
building,
can
yeah.
hear it all over, but not back then.
I was going to mention too, when you say we rehearsed in the mall, it wasn't always the same place. It was just whenever there was an empty store.
Yes.
So we
That's
had
right.
to adjust to set up our stage and our seating and everything each time separately because we just had to take what they had.
Right.
Yes, that's
One of the
right.
times, I think with Blythe Spirit, we started hauling things in, we had truckloads of stuff, and we were building the stage, and the mall management came and said, we never thought it was gonna be like this, with all this stuff, and we said, well, this is what we always do.
Theater.
Right? So after it was all up, they said, wow, you guys this is something.
Yeah.
They were really impressed then.
You know, and that is a positive, that we got out into the community so
Right.
people realized what we were doing and what an effort it was. So that was good to have that.
You know, like
Absolutely.
something Barb said before about that's where, you know, fun, nice people are or whatever, but the other thing you said, like, we all do everything. As I look through these lists, you know, I mentioned like I choreographed 2 summers in a row or maybe 3, I don't know, but when you're not, then on the other shows, you're doing the program, or you're at least finding a couple props, or you show up and paint a couple of days, and you can be on the board of directors and paint the floor. And there's just no like, there's not very much, I'm too cool for that, like
Yeah,
everybody.
There are no prima donnas.
And even a person who has like
divas.
terrible stage fright, like Barb is hilarious and willing to learn lines, and, well, there's a few, yeah. Like,
Well, maybe, yeah.
we have our skills, you know, but, like Barb is hilarious and willing to learn lines and stuff, but also willing to get there. But if you're not, if you're a person that's extremely shy, we have a lot of stuff that can do. Okay, so that makes me think of another whole track, the difference of the 80s compared to now. I just was cleaning out a box, because I'm a pep rat, and this just coincidentally before this. And so here's my schedule, part of my rehearsal schedule for working. So you can see I did it on the back of a page that I must have ripped off of something.
December of '82 is what it says.
Yes, and it's all handwritten. And so what I'm getting at is this is pre-word processor.
Yeah, exactly.
This is pre-spreadsheet. To a lot of extent, these were pre-photocopier. So this was like typing on a carbon, like back when you thought that erasable bond paper was God's gift to humanity. And we
Our green room notes.
we
were-
literally had to cut and paste. I worked on a lot of these. And so, I mean, you can see the line here, where it was cut and taped down.
You can hold that up to the camera.
Yeah, it's been like, so, I mean, it was cut and taped down, and then there's like, in the screen room notes, it says if you want to audition for working, call Kim Nordbeck, it was Nordbeck then, now it's Doyle, to volunteer. So we would have
No
phone
email.
trees, you
Yeah.
know,
Right.
no
No
email.
text.
But you know what, that's almost harder now, because now you have to stop and think, let's see, so-and-so will pick up a text.
Yeah.
So-and-so only does Facebook Messenger, so-and-so's not on Facebook. And, yeah, they have a house phone, they don't have a
This
house
would
phone.
be a good time to mention how the green room notes was our, as Ronnie was saying, was our way of communicating by mail. And I
Snail
think
mail.
we sent them out like every other month.
Oh,
for a
Yes,
while.
right.
yeah.
And
Even
I
every
have a
other
number
month.
of them, I'm hoping others do too, because it's quite a storage
Quite
for
a story.
history as well.
Mhm.
Yes.
And, yeah, all of our communication, our announcements about our meetings, our board meeting, everything was on our green room
Numbering
notes.
tickets?
Right, hand
Yeah, by
numbering
hand.
tickets.
Hand numbering
Yeah.
tickets, yeah.
Oh, and the boards
All
at
the
the
ticket
Century
boards,
Store.
right?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
The ticket boards at the Century Store. Do you remember those, Tina? Do you
Yeah,
remember how those worked?
oh my gosh, you know, it's not only the group in the theater, but it's the supportive community
Yes.
that allowed us to really do a lot of things.
Yeah.
And I think they appreciated our efforts, you know, we put on good productions, and I think that's what they respond to, and they come and they're very faithful, they attend the shows, and we wouldn't be here without.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
we had Century then with a hand, now we have Rechecks, and
Rechecks.
still does it. And just things like, we used the truck from Fletcher's or whatever, and
Yeah.
McKinstry's would lend us, I
Yeah.
mean, people lend us like their antiques and stuff, but also like McKinstry's might lend us a pretty nice piece of furniture.
Oh,
You
I
know?
remember,
something
we,
about that?
we did a show, and McKinstry's gave us the chair, and I think it was, oh, I can't remember, Alone Together, maybe. And one of the young girl part put makeup on her legs because she had shorts on, and she sat in the chair, and that was bad. That was really bad. That was
So
really.
what happened?
I can't remember if I don't think we had to buy the chair. I think they just paid to have it cleaned
Cleaned,
or something.
right.
Yeah.
But I think that probably McKinstry's weren't quite as generous after that.
Maybe not,
You know,
It's still-
and
it's
she
still-
never thought, and you know, you get on stage and it's hot and you're
Yeah.
sweating
Oh, yeah.
and stuff like that
Oh, yeah.
happens.
Do you have a visual of those ticket boards? Can you describe what those were like?
I'm just vaguely, no, but I go back to 1967. This lady directed Bye Bye Birdie, and I was in high school.
Yeah.
And,
Oh my gosh.
and I remember, oh my gosh, I remember that. And we rehearsed, I think, at Grace Presbyterian.
Yes, we did.
Mhm. And the dance steps, I'd never dance. I really don't sing. I don't know what I was even doing there, other than I was in high school and wanted to hang out. But I was dating my husband at the time, and every night patiently waited for me to be done with rehearsal. Patiently. And when it was all over, and he said to me, "Would you promise me something?" I said, "What?" He said, "You promised never to do another theater show." And I thought, that's okay, I don't care. So then, honest to goodness. And then I got real involved in the parochial school at St. Pete's. And we wanted to raise money, and so I was head of the PTO, the parent-teacher, PTA, whatever. And I talked them into doing this big fundraiser because I went down to Kenosha and they did shows of Poppin, so we did the big event.
Big event.
And they said, "Okay, Tina, put your money where your mouth is. You direct one of the shows." I thought, I don't know anything about directing. I don't know nothing about person, no babies. So I called Annette and I said, "Would you help me?" And she said, "Yes." And we did a melodrama. And it was so successful. We did so many shows
How
after that.
many years did we do?
Oh, a
Oh,
long
I
time,
know.
and it was
Long
just
time.
so wildly popular.
loved it.
People are
It just-
clamoring still, do it again, do it again.
Yes,
Maybe we should.
yes.
In what year was that? What time frame was that, Tina?
This was all in the early 80s.
Okay.
Yes.
Because I had Molly, who was, I would take her to rehearsal in her little baby carrier thing, you know.
Yeah, and there was
And she
a
wouldn't
lot of crossover
Mhm.
between the talents of the theater and who
Right.
performed at big event. There were a
Yeah.
lot of our people on the stage.
Right.
And that's where I first met you, Barb.
Oh,
You
is
were
that
Randy.
right?
I think that was
Okay.
the first time I met you. We were all crammed in the parking lot in the snowy weather trying to get out. And we were screaming and yelling at each other, and that's when we first met.
But isn't that amazing? I mean,
Yeah.
we worked, you and I can remember
Yeah.
sitting in your kitchen doing
Yeah.
shows and writing
Yeah.
skits and
Uh-huh.
stuff like that.
Mhm.
And then I kind of started getting involved behind. I would do a little bit of makeup, a little bit of costumes. I love set decoration. I love doing that. That was always so creative. And then Annette asked me if I would produce Annie. And since we'd worked so well together, I thought, okay, I can produce Annie for her. And I knew she would be very creative, be really successful. I had no idea it would be as big a project as it was.
Would be.
But I thought, you know what? I don't know anything about producing, what a producer does. So I thought, I think I'll watch a show from auditions all the way through. So they were having auditions for On Golden Pond. So I went the first night of auditions and I sat in the back and I watched. And Kay Stelflug was directing. And second night I went to watch some more. And she said, "Tina, you know, why don't you audition?" I said, "No, I'm fine. I'm just taking notes, you know." No, get it, you know. So I went up and honestly, I auditioned. Then I got the phone call. I got the part.
I
Then,
thought the call was gonna be from Chuck.
no, then I had to tell him. I had to tell my husband I broke a promise that I had kept for, 20-some years. And I thought, how am I going to do this? I was absolutely sick to my stomach.
Oh dear.
And I really was. And so he was standing in the kitchen, and I turned to him and I said, "I have something to tell you." And I said, "I'm not sure how you're going to feel about this." I said, "I auditioned for a play and I got a part." And he laughed. He said, "I was wondering when you would get around to doing that." He knew, and he was been really supportive. And and that was my first show. And I thought, I didn't know what I was doing at that point, but it was a lot of fun.
There are
And
many people who come